Welcome everybody to this webinar, which is being conducted as a meeting so we can all see each other, because I like to be able to see everybody. And firstly, thanks to Aaron Waters-Marsh, who's the Executive Director of the Australia UAE BC for convening it. As he mentioned, we had a Doing Business in the UAE webinar in the last couple of weeks, and we thought it was a good idea. And in fact, a lot of our members asked us if we would do a similar event for doing business in Australia. So we have gathered together, Aaron has gathered together David Garry from ABN Australia, who's going to present to the group about doing business in Australia, and Asghar Shah from New South Wales Investment New South Wales, who's going to talk specifically about doing business in New South Wales, which of course is our largest economy. And I'm sure there'll be Q&A at the end of that for people who want to take part. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you, David Garry, to give us a presentation.
Thank you very much, Christopher, for the opportunity, and welcome to all of those that have attended. It's interesting that you speak to people that you don't see with webinars, which is something that I'm not quite used to from my past experience, but nevertheless we'll proceed, and I'll perhaps just give you a little bit of a background in regard to ABN Australia with a few slides, and take it from there. Look, a little bit about ABN Australia, starting off from a humorous point of view. Back in 1976, there were two significant corporate entities established around the world. The first one was in California, USA, and that was Apple Incorporated. And on the other side of the world, the giant one that was ABN Australia, which was incorporated as well. And of course, the similarity between the two is very obvious. We still exist as a multi-generational family company. And in respect to Apple, I've got no idea who controls that beast. So our background is that back in 1976, I was working in the public service as a clerk on the days in which it was called the Registrar of Companies, and which is today's Australian Security and Investment Commission. And back then, the process of getting a company incorporated was that article clerks would arrive on the day with manual documents and hand them across the counter to the clerks for them to check the memorandum and articles, as it was called, which today is a constitution. And that particular process took about 6 weeks to get a company incorporated. And out of that, because of the urgency to have companies incorporated before the 30th of June for tax matters, ensured that a vibrant shelf company market was established. And I left the public service to join a few others in that particular industry. What we used to do was to incorporate batches of companies, about 20 at a time. We'd make up names, such as It's Been a Very Long Day Proprietary Limited. We'd pick racehorse names, all sorts of things, and make them up. We'd put them on the shelf, and accounting and legal firms would purchase them for their clients and change the name. And you could get a change of name within about a week. Back then, we had a name in respect to the shelf company game called Dial the Shelf Company, which is probably still known around the traps by the older generation of accountants and solicitors. We had a lot of fun making up names in those days, and we even, back in 2008, incorporated a shelf company called 0808 2008 Proprietary Limited, which was unique in regard to the Chinese desiring numbers associated with 8. And we sold that company for $8,888.88. So a lot of fun back those days. Of course, now you can get a company incorporated online in 10 minutes. There is still a market for some aged shelf companies, particularly where government requirements for tenders are that you used to be able to tender immediately. They are now saying you have to be in existence for, say, 2 years prior to making an application under the tender environment. To give you a understanding of the market itself, we've incorporated over 200,000 companies since 1976, over 20,000 family trusts, thousands of self-managed super funds. And a lot of these companies, although trading companies, are property holding companies, trustee of family trusts, trustee of self-managed super funds. And the database at the moment for ASIC is sitting at 3.3 million companies on the database. Bearing in mind that we've got a population of about 25,000, that's a very high number. And in the last calendar year to the end of August, we're talking about 196,000 companies have been incorporated. So those numbers are a very good indicator of a robust business economy and underpin Australia as a destination. So when you look at that, you then say, excuse me while I just move the screen along. Yep. Yeah, so basically what makes Australia a destination for business is that our population size at 25 million across 7.7 million square kilometres ensures that there are a lot of industries in agriculture, logistics, and more importantly, moving into high technology areas. I mean, that size and population is a positive because we all know that we're probably in the next 30 years going to grow to perhaps 30 million people. So there is a market there. It's a highly skilled workforce. We have a lot of immigrants who speak both languages, English and their native language, which allows for cross-purpose business deals. We've got a great lifestyle in terms of the weather compared to other perhaps monsoonal areas in the Asia-Pacific area. So it's a very stable market. It's also a gateway to the Asia-Pacific markets of China and other economies. And we're on a growth pattern. You can see that in 2021, our direct foreign investment exceeded $1 trillion. And our trade with the Middle East on a two-way basis is up to 7 billion or 16.4 AED. We've got a very resilient economy. The COVID, whilst it had its challenges in regard to cross-border delays and all sorts of different things to overcome, we have bounced back from that. We've got an economy with a growth rate of 3.72% and an intermonetary forecast of about 1.6%. So we are the world's 12th largest economy for such a small population. That's pretty good. We've got a high level of corporate governance in terms of our legal systems, which really adds value, and that ensures that we don't have major problems in regard to monetary regulation, in regard to money laundering and those sorts of things. So it's a fairly robust and regulatory framework that we have. Generally speaking, it's a good place to do business. Costs are low. Climate is terrific. And if you're wanting more information in regard to Australia as a destination, we recommend that you look at the Australian Trade and Investment benchmarking website, which we've got the details here. But of course, in every market there are challenges, and we are no different here in Australia. Doing business in any particular country comes with its its headaches in regard to how you go about it and what are the risks and how do you ensure you've got the right market entry? Do you have a cultural adaptation? And these sorts of things, need to be assessed before you start to plan an entry into a market. So you need to look at the talent that you need to do your market research, and you need to look at the geographical considerations of the size of our country. We do have challenges in the market, and continuing on, we have some currency exchange. The Australian dollar can float to be very low at times and high at other. When you're setting up business here, you want to ensure that you've got intellectual property protection, particularly in respect to trademarks. And the other issue of distance and time, but these days with computerization, it's not a major issue. So navigating, apart from the fact that I've just popped off the screen, so navigating these challenges requires research, strategic planning, and seeking local expertise or partnerships with successfully established and growing businesses as such. So market entry and getting started. You've got to identify the business opportunities, whether that's in agriculture, whether it's in IT or logistics. Work out in terms of how you're going to develop that strategy to get into that particular market. And I can't underemphasize the fact that you need to engage professional support in that requirement. And one of the other issues in Australia, when you set up your organisation, either as a foreign company or whether you decide to set up a local Australian subsidiary company, you will need to appoint a resident director who will act as the agent in respect to the foreign company or as a director of the subsidiary company. The determination in regard to which one really is a best fit scenario in regard to your organisation, but the majority of clients that we have set up have moved towards a wholly owned subsidiary company in Australia. And I think the reason for that is that in the reporting field, if you're a foreign company and you're a reasonable size, you have to provide all of the financial data of your company on a consolidated basis, right? If you're a smaller company, you can get exemption for that, but it just seems to be much easier to have a local subsidiary company. Look at joint venture strategies for alliances with other companies that are there who understand the market, because that'll give you a head up. You can look at acquisitions as well. You can look at franchising, and no matter which particular one you choose to go down, consider an employer of record for hiring workers, because the employment laws in Australia are quite high in governance, and you want to make sure that you're on top of that. One particular area in terms of companies in Australia is that directors themselves become personally liable for areas of taxes relating to GST, employee withholding tax, and superannuation. And you are required to lodge VAS activity statements on a quarterly basis and then remit the funds. If you don't remit them, the directors of those companies will end up with a penalty notice from the ATO equivalent to the debt that is owed in regard to GST, withholding tax, and superannuation. So you really need to be careful in regard to that, and that in essence covers whether you're a private company or a public company. There's a couple of other methods of business structures, simply your branch, a representative office, or ASX. Some of the key federal bodies that you have to be very much aware of are the ATO in respect to its reporting. You need to be aware of the Australian Security Investment Commission in respect to your obligation for lodgement of annual review statements and, depending on your size, financial reports. You need to be aware of AUSTRAC in regard to financial transactions in regard to money laundering. The banks in this country are obliged to have a policy of know your client and have sufficient identification documentation to ensure that if they're called upon to present that to AUSTRAC under the Anti-Money Laundering Act, then they have the details. And at the moment, in regard to the banking system in Australia, some of the banks are reluctant to open bank accounts for international companies unless the resident director takes on the role of overseeing the transactions. Now, that's a rather onerous set of rules imposing on Australian directors, but it's there and one needs to deal with that. Other key federal bodies, if you're importing consumer goods that are of a health nature, you'll need to consider the Therapeutic Goods Association and ensure that you get clearance and register your goods, otherwise you'll not be able to sell them. Those goods have to come through customs, so you'll have to deal with the Australian Border Force and make sure that you've covered the issues of biosecurity. If you're talking about large-scale investments or holding of substantial land, you'll need to deal with the Foreign Investment Review Board. So there are quite a few government bodies with regulations which you would expect under a country that provides a high level of corporate governance. Fortunately, that leads to a lot of red tape, and therefore it's imperative that you have local representation that understands that market and provides backup support. There are other national security sectors to consider in regard to the financial services market, if you're in that particular area, particularly when we move into the new systems of currency exchange and cryptocurrency. There's a fair bit of requirements to be reported on that issue. So you need to get prior approval in a number of areas in Australia if you're moving into any industry that is in the financial industries area. So having said that, you need to ensure that you get local support. There are two areas, obviously. There is the public sector support area, which can assist you with guidance and connecting you with customers, suppliers, and funding opportunities. You've got federal government level, state government, you've got Austrade, Australian Business Licence and Information Services. There are industry bodies, Chamber of Commerce, business networks, trade associations. Don't forget AUEB as an industry body to assist you in that regard. You can look for funding grants for research and development, renewable energy. If you're looking to raise substantial funds, you can consider an initial public offer through the ASX. There is also private sector support in regard to corporate secretarial services, accounting, compliance, and workforce solutions. And ABN Australia is very good in regard to business establishment and fiduciary services and professional services. We've got a fairly comprehensive senior management team. We have assisted over 250 international companies in the last 5 years set up their business in Australia. So fast and brief, it's a pretty diverse environment in regard to the market opportunity. There are regulations to be met. and we're here to assist them. I'm happy to take any questions in that regard.
Great.
Mhm.
Let's do the questions to everyone at the end. And in the meantime, let's hear from Investment New South Wales, Ali Asghar Shah, one of our long-standing members of the council and a good supporter. Ali, are you ready to go? Okay, hit it.
All right, excellent.
Better?
Look, thank you so much. Firstly, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm calling from today, which is the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. And I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Again, welcome from ICC in Sydney. I'm at Fine Food today, which a few of you might already know, which is a very exciting food and beverage trade show, which we're very lucky to be hosting in Sydney this year. And a huge thank you to Christopher and Aaron Waters-Marsh for the opportunity. It's been a wonderful 2 years with Australia UAE Business Council, and I'm hoping there's many more to our partnership. And so a little bit about what I'll be talking about today. I'm the Associate Director for India and the Middle East for Investment New South Wales, which is New South Wales Government's Trade and Investment Promotion Agency. And we'll be talking about how to do business with New South Wales. So I'll talk a little bit about why New South Wales and how it's sort of primed for opportunities to happen, especially between New South Wales and the UAE. We are Australia's largest state economy. In fact, we are larger than Hong Kong and Singapore, and the most populous as well, so upwards of 7 million people within the state. It is some of the highest, most highly educated, skilled workforces. So companies that are thinking of moving to Australia, you'll be able to have about 40% of some of the 40% as sort of in of Australia's ICT workforce to be situated in New South Wales. 6 out of the 12 universities that are in New South Wales are in the top 200, and of course, New South Wales sort of ranks among some of the largest economies in the world. Some of our proactive sectors that we're really sort of focused on, and we're very sort of happy to work with Australia UAE Business Council on a couple of these key sectors as well. That is medtech and life sciences, technology, agri-food, clean economy and resources, and defense and aerospace. In terms of international education, that is a relatively small sector when it comes to the UAE. However, the visitor economy is a significant piece that we work in, and defense and aerospace is one that has really been sort of coming up in the last couple of years, especially within the space area as well. The way New South Wales attracts investment into the state is primarily through not just sort of focusing on key sectors where we've been putting significant attention to developing those industries, but also through our priority precincts where the government has invested significant sums of money to really develop that industry ecosystem and allow for those sectors, those priority sectors to flourish. One of the key ones that we have is Tech Central, which is the largest tech precinct now in the Southern Hemisphere, and it is already up and running with the Sydney Quantum Academy, the Space Industry Hub, as well as having access to some of the largest research universities in in Australia with University of Sydney, and UTS being just at its doorstep. So it's really looking at creating an environment where we bring tech, we bring academia, we bring research, and really let that area flourish. Some of the key anchor tenants in that are already Australia, some of Australia's largest unicorns and success stories in the last couple of years, including Atlassian, Canva, and we will soon have Google moving their offices there as well. Then we have the Westmead Health Precinct, which is out towards Parramatta, which is going to be Australia's largest health and research zone. Of course, this is tied to the Westmead Hospital, but there's already two university campuses, one existing and another one, which is USyd, that's bringing another university, health-specific university campus there, including moving into mRNA and viral vector manufacturing in that area as well. There will also become one of the largest clinical trials areas within Australia once some of the work is complete. Another key area is special activation precincts, which are key regional zones within the state of New South Wales that are aimed at developing some of those key priority sectors, such as Williamstown will have a sort of a defense lane. Parks has a waste to energy and renewables focus, and Narrabri and Wagga will have sort of more of an agribusiness focus. So it's really sort of trying to really see how we sort of empower some of the regional areas as well. And our job is to make sure that any company is interested, is to make sure that we sort of provide an end-to-end service from anywhere from what Aaron, Garry was speaking about, from how to sort of access support, from something as sort of how to register and what would be the best way to set up, all the way to, all right, like how can we assist with council approvals and looking at what are some of those real sort of practical issues that a company may face when they're setting up an overseas operation. A key one I just wanted to touch base on that we're really sort of looking at is the Western Sydney Aerotropolis. It is going to be Sydney's first and only 24-hour international airport that commences in 2026. And there, adjacent to that, is a city centre that is currently being built called the Bradfield City Centre, which will really look at focusing on advanced manufacturing and really sort of building that research capability. So any companies working in the area of looking at bringing manufacturing, especially advanced manufacturing, sort of backed by tech innovation and research, this is really the area where a lot is being done to make sure that you're able to set up as smoothly as possible, with, of course, the added perks that will be available to you. One of which is that CSIRO will actually, which is Australia's leading research body, will actually be moving their HQ to Bradfield City Centre in a matter of a couple of years. Now, where do we sort of fit in? Speaking of our priorities and sectors, we are here to help you sort of help you invest into New South Wales. We would sort of be your first point of contact and your concierge within government, and then really be able to put you and triage your requests as necessary, as your sort of business sees fit. And then, of course, our job from here to offshore is really looking at how we sort of bring global companies here and take our companies global to the rest of the world. Some of the ways we sort of set up, and I'd be able to focus a little bit on a UAE example as well, where we sort of look at, when you're an overseas company setting up an office, we'd be able to not only sort of co-invest, but be able to sort of provide opportunities within the sort of not only the grant structure, but how do we sort of bring partners on and introduce you to potential business partners, and then of course be able to see how you can not only sort of set up but expand your aspirations here as well. Now, just a little bit on the New South Wales UAE relationship as well. Our merchandise trade has been a billion. UAE is the largest market for New South Wales. One of the key things for us is looking at the FDI investment from UAE into Australia, which was worth 4.5 billion. So for a country that's only 10 million people, it really does, punch above its weight. Some of our key, I think one of the key sort of areas that we focus on is obviously F&B, ag tech, health and med tech, but then also looking at logistics, hospitality, and aviation, which are sort of very, very particular for the UAE. One of the interesting facts for us from an investment perspective, which is not FDI, primarily stock extent investment, is in the last 12 years, 8 out of 9 asset revitalization investments into New South Wales have had investment from the UAE. So you're looking at Barangaroo, you're looking at Transgrid, WestConnex. They've all had significant investment from the UAE. Some of the assistance that we sort of provide across the board with the UAE is that we've got, from an export perspective, we've got export programs. However, a lot of our key engagement in the UAE is really sort of working on trade shows and with our partners at Arab Health, at Gulf Food, but including sort of opportunities beyond that, IDEX, GITEX, as well as we're looking forward to working on a COP28 program as well, and really seeing how we can sort of build those partnerships as well. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the companies that have found success and the ones that we were able to support here. A couple of examples were obviously Aramex, but in the last couple of years, we've been also able to support Masdar, which is obviously a Mubadala company, but they're JV with Tribe here in Australia, and for them to be able to set up their HQ in New South Wales, as well as looking at Hassan Abood Group, which is a UAE-based sort of asset management and hospitality group, who recently underwent acquisition and uplifting of a couple of hotel sites through their Crystalbrook Hotel branch, Crystalbrook Collection Hotels. And Aramex is probably one of the ones where we supported, and they've really been able to sort of flourish their operations here. Aramex, New South Wales government supported Aramex's move into Australia. They were looking at the acquisition of a courier service based out of New Zealand called Fastway Courier, but we also assisted them. They wanted to move to mainland Australia, and we assisted them in bringing their HQ over here. They started as a very small operation, and of course, primarily Fastway's operation, but in the last 5 years, they moved here around 2017, 2018. They've grown from a team of about, of course, courier is a big sort of, human heavy industry, from about 150 to 600 people across Australia, with about 28 depots across the country, with the largest warehouse being in Sydney. Some of the support that New South Wales provided was really looking at how we assist them with all the sort of logistical components, which is introducing them to sites across Sydney, as well as looking at what business partners could they work with, and which service providers they can look at as well. That was 6 years ago. The good thing is we don't just stop there. Aramex and us continuously since then have been speaking and have continuously been in touch to see what their aspirations are and how we can continue to assist them, which is looking at, do they have any expansion plans? And are they looking at any sort of key technologies or innovations that we might have and they could sort of tap into? And that is why recently we've actually been sort of speaking to them about looking at expansion through the Western Sydney Aerotropolis, given the fact that that will be a very freight and logistics focused airport, given the fact that it is a 24-hour airport. So it's really got that, you're sort of in it with us for good. We will sort of look at any sort of smaller to more complex queries and really make sure that we are able to assist you to set up here. So thank you so much for that opportunity, and I'm very happy to take any questions. I should also add, we do have someone in the audience I just wanted to sort of acknowledge as well. We have Kasim Yunus in the audience, and I must acknowledge he's probably the master in this particular area. So Kasim, I might even throw a question or two to you as well, given you are an expert.
That sounds good, Ali. Kasim, do you want to respond to that challenge?
Thanks, Christopher. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks very much. I wasn't expecting to be on the spot, but
Sorry
thank you very much
that.
for the nice words. But I'm more than happy to see how we can support both the Australia UAE Business Council, New South Wales government. I'm no longer with the Victorian government. I left the Victorian Government Trade and Investment Office about 2 months ago, and now exploring a few opportunities in the private sector. But more than happy to support growing the link between Australia and the UAE and beyond in the Gulf region. Thank you.
Good. Any questions to either David, Garry, or to Ali about their presentations would be good. I am looking in the chat, and there was a question here from Andrew de Alvis about us hosting a similar webinar for South Australian businesses, which I'm sure Aaron's more than happy to look into. And but any questions for both David and Ali? They were very good, comprehensive briefings, and thank you very much. And Aaron and I were texting each other. We will circulate both to the members of the Aus UABC, not just the ones on the Zoom, but also the rest of the membership, because I think they'd get a lot from it as long as David and Ali are happy for us to do that.
Not a problem.
Great. All right. Questions? Any questions or any comments from anyone else on the call?
Christopher, I have a question, if you don't mind.
Of course.
Sorry, my video is off today, but I'll promise to be online next time. We're hearing from time to time that Australia is struggling with numbers of talents. In terms of finding workers, laborers across many sectors, including the agriculture sector. Maybe from Garry or yourself, Chris, how do you see the future market for workforce and to support the growth of the economy and the growth of the manufacturing and providing services?
David, why don't you go first?
Because one of the things I've noticed in Australia is when you get an Uber or a taxi, the driver is usually multi-skilled and has 1 or 2 degrees, right? So the quality of the workforce is there. It's simply a matter of finding the fit and giving them the opportunities. There are high numbers of highly qualified migrants in this country that will fill the requirements of any entity that wishes to start here. That's just from a daily observation.
Thank you, David. Did I cut you off?
No, I'm fine.
Good. And so my observation would be that the Australian government and industry are very pro skilled migration. 25 years ago, 1 in 8 migrants were skilled, and 7 out of 8 were family reunion or refugees. And today that number is reversed. So 7 out of 8 are skilled migrants. and there has been a rehabilitation of the migration program in the eyes of the population. There's still a strain of more migrants means I lose my job, and there isn't enough space in Australia. Neither of which of those propositions are true. One, clearly there's plenty of space, and the only problem with lack of space is the planning decisions made by governments not to allow more land to be developed. And in terms of taking jobs, well, it's well documented that for every skilled migrant who comes to Australia, they create between 3 and 4 jobs on top of their own job. So most of them start small businesses. Many of them go into manufacturing industry, primary industries, construction, infrastructure, even defence industry, and are very productive members of society. So most policymakers recognise that, and that's why even the Labor government in the last 12 months has increased the take of skilled migrants. And it's certainly true that small business and business in general are finding it very, very hard to find enough workers to fill the jobs, particularly across things like hospitality and construction, infrastructure and defence and primary industries. We do have a program in Australia for Pacific workers, which is a temporary Pacific workers program in which they come in for short periods of time, and they're particularly utilised in things like fruit picking industries in Northern Australia or the Riverland, the Riverina, etc. And there's a lot of support for that program. And I think the reality of skilled migration is that Australians need more skilled migrants. And whatever the political persuasion of governments, they will continue to have support for skilled migrants. It's just a matter of where they settle. So there is a general policy to push skilled migrants away from Sydney and Melbourne and push them towards the regions and the smaller cities. And I think that's a good policy. But there's certainly no sense that there's going to be any reduction of skilled migrants because there simply aren't enough people in Australia to do the work that's required to be done.
Thanks, Christoph.
Thanks, Kasim. It's nice to get a question. I'm feeling a lack of, relevance in my post-political career.
I have so many questions, but I don't want to dominate.
Well, anyone else like to ask a question?
There is a question from Anju on the chat.
Okay. In the UAE, it's very easy to set up a business and also get the visa for founders and directors. Do we have a similar visa process in Australia? Well, we do actually have a similar visa process in Australia. So, Ali, did you want to comment on that? Because you're the presenter.
Sure. So, Anju, yes, Australia does have a business innovation stream visa and a business owner visa stream. Easy is a very I'm sure it's straightforward, but the timelines are always going to be interesting, but it's the same in any part of the world. Setting up a business is actually, and I might get Aaron, Garry to comment on that as well. It is very, very easy to set up a business, sort of a simple business structure in Australia. Of course, due diligence and really sort of being able to get advice is sort of is always crucial to that piece. Timelines are all, look, I'm not the federal government. We do not provide advice on visas. However, the timelines are provided on the immigration website. It's usually under the business innovation and business owner visa streams that you are able to come through. But I might sort of pass on to Aaron as well, just to see if he wants to say anything around setting up businesses.
Ali, it's David here, and I'm using Aaron's computer because of
Oh, sorry, David. Yes, apologies
and
for that.
That's why the name Aaron appears on the screen.
Sorry.
That's all right. Look, in terms of setting up small business, once you're here, it's a very fast process. You can get a company incorporated within a day. You can go to a bank and open a bank account. You need to get yourself a director identification number. You need to get an ABN. You need to register for goods and services tax. All of those are basically a process that professional firms like ourselves do daily, every single day. So the only area that has been strengthened lately is that the Know Your Client issue in regard to banking and financial markets has become very, very strong. So we're talking about ensuring that you can provide proof of identity documentation at a high level to get started. There are overlays in terms of government issues of MyGov, identity regulations that make sure that before you can register one, you are registered on another. But all of them are pretty well handled. It sounds like a lot of red tape, but if you outsource that process to specialists, well, within a week, you're up and running.
And in terms of visas, the time for the processing of visas has dramatically reduced in the last 18 months. The government has put a great deal more money and resources into processing visas. And the general rule of thumb is the more money you have, the faster the visa is processed, because we want those people to bring their investment to Australia more so than any other skilled migrant. So there is a ladder of speed depending on what it is exactly it is you want to do.
And Andrew, to your question, I'm actually going to share the link to the website as well. The IMI website actually clearly states visa processing times for each and every visa stream, and you'd be able to see the ones that are particularly for business innovation or business owner visa streams as well.
Good, thanks, Ali. It's very helpful. Oh my goodness, there's another one from Andrew. It's all happening. Digital regulations. Australia's far behind, unlike the UAE. That's nice. Are we progressing with this regards to this topic? I can't comment on digital regulations. I'm not a member of the Australian government, and I don't know the answer to that question. I know that we progress slowly because we have tremendous concern about cybersecurity, but does anybody else on the call have knowledge about an answer to Andrew's question?
The only thing that I can say is that it's really about proof of identity. If you have got your documentation right, well, then the process of digital registration already exists, right? You don't have to front up as an individual in front of a clerk as I did in 1976. So I think it is there from that point of view, if that answers the question.
Thank you, David. So any more questions or comments or final questions? Aaron, did you want to make any final comments?
I'd just like to say to both David, Garry, and to Ali, Asghar, Shah, thank you so much for your time this afternoon and for contributing to the webinar. Both of your contributions were very, very insightful, and I think there's a lot of value there for our members and for the broader business community and those who are interested in doing business in Australia. So thank you very much.
And I'd like to thank Investment New South Wales and Ali, and I'd like to thank them also for sponsoring the event that we're having in Abu Dhabi, or so Dubai, in the first week of December as part of COP28, and encourage everybody on the call to be in touch with Aaron if they haven't already about signing up to our delegation, which is starting to look very exciting. And thank you very much to David, Garry. ABN Australia was one of our new members for the council, and it's great to see them being engaged nice and early in the process. And thank you all very much for making the effort to be on the Zoom.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Christopher.
So
Thanks,
engaged,
Aaron.
Right, thank you all. Cheers.
See you later.
Bye.